Welcome to Only Joe, where prop bets, psychedelics, and comedy metrics all get weird fast. A player allegedly chases a last-second basket to swing the spread. The CIA apparently helped flood the culture with LSD, and comics are out here being judged by follower counts like their skincare brands. That is an aggressively stupid and very modern lineup. Sports right now feels like three separate arguments happening in the same room. First, the NBA has basically moved to a way looser stance on weed. It removed marijuana from the standard testing panel, so players can use it without league discipline. Meanwhile, the NFL is still doing random post-game drug tests, which tells you these leagues are living in totally different centuries. And whatever you think about weed, the real integrity panic isn't that, it's gambling. Investigators have been looking at cases where players allegedly manipulated tiny game moments to hit betting lines. One example was a player grabbing a rebound to get over a 4.5 rebounds prop. Another was a guy sprinting for a last-second basket to move the spread. That's the part that should make everybody's neck tighten a little, because with huge betting pools, one little stat padding move can burn a ton of people at once. It's not just some harmless gambler degeneracy story. If the audience thinks the weird little details are rigged, the whole product starts smelling fake. Then you've got the Supreme Court deadlocking 6-6 after one recusal on whether trans women can compete in women's sports. And that debate is exactly as combustible as you'd expect. Critics point to physiological differences and fairness. Supporters point to inclusion and civil rights. This is one of those issues where everybody acts like it's simple, and it really isn't. But pretending fairness questions don't exist is not serious, and pretending inclusion questions don't exist isn't serious either. Comedy has its own version of game fixing now, and it's called metrics brain. A lot of comics are under insane pressure to juice follower counts, streaming numbers, and anything else that can be screenshot for a meeting. That creates this gross setup where anxiety and depression get fed by the same machine that's supposed to reward talent. Gatekeepers love reach because reach looks neat on a spreadsheet, so people with actual craft can get shoved aside by somebody who's just better at posting clips with captions in all caps. Ali Sadiq is the useful counterexample here. His early specials hit hard, even without explosive follower growth, which should not be surprising, except the business keeps acting shocked when good comedy comes from being good at comedy. His whole approach is process over scoreboard. Write every day, perform, review the tapes, improve in tiny increments, keep going. And honestly, that feels almost rebellious now, because everybody wants one viral moment to do the work of 10 years. He uses an archery analogy that makes total sense. You don't become great because you occasionally feel inspired. You become great because you repeat the movement until your body and brain stop negotiating with each other. That's less glamorous than posting your follower milestone, but it's also how people actually get dangerous on stage. Now, for one of my favorite sentences in this whole batch, declassified records indicate the CIA bought much of the world's LSD supply in the 1950s. Just an absolutely unhinged origin story for modern counterculture. The agency distributed it to researchers, and that covert pipeline indirectly helped feed the 1960s psychedelic wave through people like Ken Kesey and, eventually, the Grateful Dead orbit. So yes, part of the hippie explosion appears to have roots in government experimentation. You genuinely cannot improve on that irony. The thing gets even stranger when you move from history into experience. Accounts of mushroom use run from chatty, social edible vibes all the way to full hallucinations, including these tiny Lilliputian visions people have described. And what's fascinating is the overlap. Across different times and cultures, people report weirdly similar imagery and altered perceptions after psychoactive fungi. That doesn't prove every mystical theory people want to attach to it, but it absolutely raises the big creepy questions about consciousness, unseen entities, and why the human brain keeps opening the same bizarre doors. Nature also keeps reminding us that humans love confident bad ideas. Introduce a species with no natural predators, like Asian carp, and suddenly you've got a population explosion wrecking native fish and throwing whole lake systems out of balance. Same basic lesson with China's sparrow eradication during the Great Leap Forward. Kill the birds, insects boom, crops get hammered, and the disaster helps feed into the Great Chinese Famine. It's a brutal example of what happens when you treat ecosystems like a spreadsheet and start deleting rows. Then there's industrial meat. Estimates for US chicken slaughter are around 24 to 26 million birds a day, which is one of those numbers that doesn't even land properly at first because it's too huge. And once it does land, you get why the arguments over animal welfare, environmental damage, and reducing meat consumption aren't going away. People want cheap food, but the scale of the machine is so massive that pretending there isn't a moral or ecological bill attached to it feels childish. Last thing, and this one annoys people for obvious reasons. When somebody like Carl Sinclair gets nailed in a high-profile tax fraud case, the message is always very stern and very theatrical. Pay up, we caught the cheat. But public anger spikes when that gets paired with stories about government waste and bloated projects that somehow keep rolling. The example here is a $600 million White House East Wing ballroom, with roughly half supposedly taxpayer-funded despite earlier talk of a taxpayer-free build. And that's where trust starts leaking out. People will tolerate enforcement a lot more easily if they don't feel like their money is being fed into absurd vanity spending on the other side. It's hard to lecture the public about responsibility while unveiling a ballroom bill that sounds like it was generated by satire software. That's it for Only Joe. We've got sports integrity drama, comedians fighting the algorithm, CIA acid law, ecological cell phones, and a ballroom bill that sounds fake until it doesn't. Pretty solid reminder that reality still has range. This episode was generated by Podkey. Create your own at podkey.fm.